Hello, Flosstube. This is Stasha, and welcome back to Stitch and Crime. I am coming to you on the first Sunday of March, and we have a February recap, and we have some really interesting crime today. I went and looked, just to give you a preview of what we're going to talk about in the crime section, I went looking for the Tinder date murders and found out there are actually 2 cases here in Utah. But we'll start with stitching. I didn't get a lot of stitching done in February just because I ended up with the flu and it's a busy time of year. So statistics, for those that are interested in that, which is me, 7,259 stitches, which is down from 8,000 in January and way down from last year. Average was 259, median was 249, maximum was 556, minimum was 0 because I had the flu. I worked on 9 projects. I had 3 finishes, 1 start, and we ended the month with 35 whips. We started the month with 37 whips. So, finishes. My Christmas present piece, 7 swans to rule them all. If you can't read that, it's 7 swans to rule them all, 6 geese to find them, 5 rings to bring them all, and in the pear tree bind them. So I'm thinking that may make a cute pillow or something. Not quite sure. The fabric on this, you can't get this fabric. So once upon a time, I used to work for a company that did enrollment for government contractors, and they sent me out to a military base that was very close to Picture This Plus. And I went to Picture This Plus, and this is out of the Oops bin. So this was a piece of fabric that they it didn't turn out the way they expected it, so the fabric just never went on sale. So this is my Picture This Plus Oops, and the fiber is Bestitched Me Pumpkin, and I believe it's a silk. Yeah, it's a silk. The next finish I had was also a February start, and this is Shepherd's Bush a year in stitches. This is the February piece. So this is my February, and it still has the hoop rings. And then my third finish is the Nora Corbett Mirabilia New Year's Eve Fairy, except for we changed it because you go to a New Year's Eve party in your little black dress. The kit has kind of a champagne colored dress, but I just wanted a little black dress. And then I also did the laces on the shoes a little differently too. There are 3 types of beads in there instead of 2. And that's really about all there is to say about that one. And there's dog hair on it, which is I was noticing in the camera, so hold on a second. There. Now you can look at it without the dog hair. So yes, I tied the laces at the top of her shoes. But there is New Year's Eve Fairy. And there are several kits of that still available. It was originally a kit only. I found several patterns on eBay, and somebody was trying to sell one on Etsy for like $30. You can get the full kit for $12. There's still shops selling the kit for $12. So for heaven's sakes, do not pay $33 on Etsy for it when you can get the full kit for $12. Okay, so February from Shepherd's Bush was one of my starts. And then my other start, this was my birthday start, is Stitch Every Day from Hands On Design. Yes, I changed the colors. Yes, I changed the fabric. Of course, pattern's just a place to start. Do you ever expect me to actually stitch something the way the designers did it? Okay, well, maybe well, I even changed some of my Teresa Wenslers. So, yeah, pattern is just a place to start. Make it your own. So here's Stitch Every Day. We have purple flowers and blue lettering. And that's also one of the 9 pieces I worked on. Actually, let's do it on there. So, the whips I worked on. You saw Year in Stitches. You saw New Year's Fairy. So for my year of the dragon, I'm working on Sentinel. This is a pattern by Firewing Designs. It is stitched on a Picture This Plus fabric using anchor floss. I worked up across. I put in because this was my Whip Go square. I put in over 1,000 stitches in that purple wing. Was this my Whip Go? No, this was not my Whip Go. This was but I did put in 1,000 stitches because this was my Year of the Dragons this month. So I will work on putting 1,000 stitches in that next month too. So we'll talk about goals once we get through everything else. So one of my Whip Go squares was Tonight We Ride by Autumn Lane Stitchery. This was in the Halloween box in 2022. It is a Bestitched Me fabric, DMC floss, with a little glow-in-the-dark Krynic. So there will be some glow-in-the-dark Krynic in here. I put 1,000 stitches into that. And then to hit my goal on Kingdom of Books that's upside down. To hit my goal on Kingdom of Books this year, I will need to put between 300 and 500 stitches in each month. So I put 500 stitches into Kingdom of Books this month. Noah's Sub was my other Whip Go square. And Noah's Sub is also the one I'm working on. I'm concentrating on finishing next, now that I've finished New Year's Eve Fairy. This was the one on my list to work on after New Year's Eve Fairy. So we did this month we got 4 birds and a lot of messed up in here, but I'm not going to undo it. But I decided it's probably going to be easier to come out to this edge and just start doing diagonal rows up and down. So I'm trying to put in at least 100 stitches a night in this. And we'll see how far I get this month. Hopefully I finish it. And then the other whip I worked on to meet the goal for this one this year, this is Secret Carousel by Hade. It will probably be the last Hade I ever buy, but that's another story. Way too much drama this month. So anyway, this is I need to put in 1,054 stitches in this every month to meet my goal. I only made 870 this month, so I'm a little short. But look, I am putting in colors that are not 939. And that's very exciting because I'm putting in colors that are not 939. I am so tired of DMC 939. So hopefully in the next little while, I will start to get some actual real life colors. So those were all the whips. So, haul. So for haul, Cindy Sorley at Stitchery Express has been opening up her shop. She was just a warehouse space, but the store next to her left. So now she has actual stitching space. So on Saturdays, you can go up and sit and stitch, and that has been very detrimental to my budget, but we'll show you why. Just fudge and carry on, because that's what I do most of the time after all. Make it your own. And then I fell in love with Whispered in the Wind. Whispered on the Wind. Whispered by the Wind. Okay, anyway, this designer, Mary McDonald. I have fallen in love with these. So this is I got Wizard's Gate and Astronomer's Gate earlier, but I got Witch's Gate. Moonset. I will probably do those as flats instead of pillows, but those are just so cute. Moonrise. I want to show you something first with Moonrise. I'll go back to Moonrise. So the Explorer's Tomb. See how this is, you've got the gates and then you open it up and you've got the tomb and the cat and the dog, the cat and the wolf, or whichever they are. Either way, the crow's there. I was thinking if you took this Explorer's Tomb idea of that stand-up that opens up and did that with Moonrise, that would be so cool. So you have like the tomb, you'd have like either the tomb and the gate, or the tombstone and the gate on the outside, and then the house and the other, whichever one wasn't on the outside, on the inside. So you could make that a reversible stand-up. That would be I thought that would be kind of cool to do. We have the gatekeepers. And just to show that they don't do only Halloween stuff, this is Fugue. And in one of my Silks for You Christmas boxes, there is a silk that is very, very close to this. And I thought, oh, that would be so perfect for that Silks for You. And then Christmas Knot. And this was done with Threadworks, Woodland Green, and Bleeding Hearts, with Aztec gold high luster and Vatican gold accents. So I will probably find a variegated green and a variegated red to do with that. That just really, I really like that. But then I'm probably also going to add Cantata on my wish list. I just love those. That's Simply Christmas as well. Those are just so gorgeous. Back to Halloween with the Morning Tree. In the Gloaming. Okay, and then I got a piece of fabric, but I can't remember what I bought the fabric for. I know there was a piece I was going to stitch on this, but I don't remember what it was. And then I put this together so that I wouldn't lose I wouldn't separate the fabric from the pattern, kind of like. So I found Candy Cane Lane by Brenda Gervais. And I got thinking that would be so cute on this, on the peppermint fabric. So right now with Whip Warriors, I am doing 24 and 24, and I have built my slots around Christmas, Halloween, designers, and my Christmas slot is full right now. So I can't start that until my Christmas slot is empty and ready to go. But we are trying to work down to where I will have only 25 pieces going into 2025. So anyway, that's everything I bought at Stitchery Express this month. Then I also got my auto ship for the fabulous houses from Cottage Garden. My auto ship comes from a stitching shop in Colorado. You're going, Stasha, Craft Center is around the corner from your house. Okay, correction, Craft Center was around the corner from my house. Craft Center closed February 29th. It is now gone, which means that Stitchery Express is the nearest LNS to my house now. That is 2 LNSs I have lost in the last 5 years. Unfortunately, Craft Center is completely shut down, but after, it's 57 years in business, they decided maybe it's time to retire. So they retired. However, one of the things I did get when they were selling everything off is I bought myself one of the spinner racks to hang all my Classic Color Works, Weeks Dye Works, Gentle Arts threads, Splendor. I am still in the process of moving things out of my DMC cases onto the spinner rack, but I'll include a picture of it at the end because this spinner rack's great. I am so glad I got it. Now my stash room looks even more like a shop. So I did get that. And there was something else I was going to say, but now I can't remember what it was. Anyway, goals for March. Okay. The 2 Whip Go squares that were drawn ended up being both of the Teresa Wenslers that I had on the board. So I will be putting 1,000 stitches in on Summer Carousel Horse and 1,000 stitches in on Fortunate Traveler. Those are both on floor stands in my front room, which my kids refer to as Mom's Studio. So I will include some pictures at the end. So 1,000 stitches each on 2 Teresa Wenslers. In fact, right now on my whips, Fortunate Traveler is my oldest whip. It was started in 2003, right after I saw it at the Utah State Fair. Somebody else had entered it and won some nice ribbons, and I started it, and I am not even halfway done. It's like somewhere along the line, I just no, confetti, let's not. But I'm working on a Haid, and that has a lot of confetti once I get out of the 939. So 1,000 stitches on both of those projects. Then I also need to complete 1,000 stitches on a secret carousel. I want to put in at least 500 to 700 stitches on the West Point piece that I'm working on for my sister. In fact, if I wanted to free up a slot on my 24 and 24, I could hurry and finish that and be done with it. But I want to get Noah's sub finished first. So we'll put the West Point piece in as the focus to finish after we finish Noah's sub. So there will be at least 100 stitches on Noah's sub every night. And then, of course, we want to put at least 300 to 500 stitches in on Sentinel, because we've got to work on our Year of the Dragon. The March piece I'm giving you the February recap. I have already started the March Year in Stitches piece. So we'll finish the March Year in Stitches piece. And that should be good for goals. So one of the things, I mentioned my birthday was in February. One of the things I gave myself in February, besides a haircut that I'm still trying to figure out how to style, I had a professional organizer come in and help me with my stash room. And she had some really great ideas. And we sorted through some things. And in sorting through some things, I discovered I still have low-run cards. I have given away all of my low-ran organizers because they just didn't work for me. But if you have a low-ran organizer and would like to have a whole bunch of the cards, drop me a line in the comments. Okay? And I will be happy to mail these off to you. Is that everything for stitching? Okay, verticals. Okay, yeah, that's the end of stitching. So let's go into local true crime. Of course, the first thing in local true crime that everybody's been following nationally is Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt. Ruby Franke, if you are not familiar with the case, is a mother who had an influencer channel with over a million subscribers called 8 Passengers. And last August 2023, she was arrested along with her therapist / life coach because Jodi no longer had a therapist license. So she was a life coach because she couldn't be a therapist anymore. The two of them were arrested for basically torturing Ruby's kids. If you want some heartbreaking details, the 911 call of the gentleman who Ruby's son escaped and ran to get water and help, you can hear him choke up trying not to say the word tortured in front of the child. But they say that both of Ruby's kids probably would not have survived another week if they had not gotten them to the hospital when they did. So in Utah, judges do not have their hands are not really tied for certain sentences. It's the parole board that really determines the length of your sentence. So Ruby and Jodi were both sentenced to 4 counts to be served consecutively of 1 to 15 years. Now, in Utah, when you have consecutive felonies like this, these were second-degree felonies. In Utah, when you have consecutive second-degree felonies, the maximum sentence is 30 years. So the minimum sentence these ladies will serve will be 4 years, with the maximum to be 30 years. It will be decided by the parole board how long they stay. Jodi was very much not contrite. According to the prosecutor, she has been blaming the children and claiming that she is the victim in telephone calls from the jail. And I really hope that somebody does a FOIA on that and we get to hear some of those calls, because for a grown woman to claim that an 8-year-old and 12-year-old are perpetrators in their own torture, that's just beyond me. That's just delulu. Ruby, as for her statement, got up there and sounded like she was getting an award from the Academy. I'd like to thank the officers who arrested me. I'd like to thank all these people. I'd like to thank when the officer put the handcuffs on me, it freed me. Honey, you were paying Jodi cash to give you bad advice. You just had to stop giving her the checks and it all would have gone away. The thing that bothers me the most, though, and basically gave me Lori Daybell chills and reminded me of Bryce, who was kidnapped by his mom and taken to Alaska, was when Ruby said, I was living in a world of delusion, thinking that thinking the police were controlling, and she just started listing off conspiracies. She said the police were controlling, hospitals harmed children, which tells me she's probably anti-vax. Church leaders were lustful and liars, and husbands didn't protect. Which makes me wonder what went on between her and Kevin that she needed to be protected from. After the sentencing, Ruby's family has come out and said that Jodi basically started isolating Ruby and started pulling her away from her family, trying to keep her from talking to anybody. Isn't that the classic thing that your domestic violence abuser does? The first thing he does, it's not even just a he anymore. Jodi's a classic Jodi's a classic abuser in a domestic violence situation. Ruby and her children were living at Jodi's house. They were domiciled together. That makes it domestic violence. We don't know for sure what Jodi and Ruby's relationship was, other than Ruby says, well, I paid her to coach me and help me keep Satan away from my children. Honey, you were the evil one, not your children. And it's going to take years and years of therapy to unscrew the mental torture that those kids have been put through. And that's one of the reasons why Kevin is suing Jodi Hildebrandt's estate. Jodi has a house listed for $5.3 million. Frankly, I don't think it's worth that much. But her house is listed for $5.3 million, and Franke is suing for all that money. And frankly, Jodi has other victims that probably ought to be suing for part of that money too. So that is that. Oh, and Kevin does not have the children back yet. So that is what happened with Ruby and Jodi, and they will go before the parole board for the first time in, I believe they said, August of 2025. So next case. The next case is not actually a crime. It is a corrupt politician. So on the Utah State School Board, there is a representative called Natalie Cline. Ms. Cline has been very much in favor of banning books, fighting against anything but the white supremacist version of history taught in schools. And she was approached by a father who gave her a picture of a high school basketball player and said, "This is a player on the girls' basketball team. I don't think she's a girl. And when I questioned it, they threw me out of the game." Okay, that was partially true. When this father saw the player, he demanded physical proof that the player was not transsexual. Okay, first off, Utah has a law that states in high school sports, you cannot play on the team that does not match your birth certificate. So the school has already verified that this player's birth certificate stated they were born female. They had to even try out for the team. But honestly, if some creepy dad came up to my daughter at a basketball game and demanded proof that she was a girl, I'd want her kicked out. I'd want him kicked out too, because there is no way I'm letting some guy look at my daughter's genitals to prove that she's a girl. And that is just creepy that he even freaking asked. But Natalie Cline, instead of calling the school and verifying that they were following Utah state law, she takes the picture that's given to her by this father, publishes it on her social media feed, and says, "Girls basketball, ... And the comments and death threats to this girl were horrendous. And this is an elected government official who's supposed to be protecting our children and doing what's best for our children in the school systems. Now, within 72 hours, Natalie did take the picture down. But in the meantime, you have a girl who's been thoroughly traumatized because of comments made on that. Her parents are like, we're hoping she didn't see the comments. She doesn't have a cell phone. We've been trying to protect her from this. But I sure hope that some lawyer takes their case and sues Natalie on their behalf. Because this is an elected official bullying a teenage girl. And this is not acceptable behavior for our elected officials. Now, for those of you who are as outraged about this as I am, Natalie Cline is up for election this year. I am not in her area. I cannot vote for her. But you can bet that I went to Amanda Bollinger's page, who is running against Natalie Cline, and I made a donation. I didn't make a big donation, but I figure even a small donation helps. And hopefully Amanda got a lot of support from this sort of thing. The other thing that just totally disgusts me about this whole situation is when Natalie finally did issue an apology, she didn't actually apologize. She blames the LGBTQ community for making it that people would actually question that this was a girl. That's not an apology, Natalie. That's more bullying. And this is, those of you that live in her area, this is the type of representation you have been getting. And unfortunately, there is not a way to recall elected officials in Utah. Kind of reminds you of Courthouse Becky in the Murdaugh trial. There's no way to recall her either. But thanks to Natalie Cline and Courthouse Becky, the Utah State Legislature is looking at, can we amend the Constitution to allow for removal of elected officials for gross misconduct? And how do we define gross misconduct? And it didn't pass in this legislative session, but I'm willing to bet next year you're going to see it. Kind of like Kevin Franke is also pushing for licensing of life coaches. So, more cases. This week, on March 8th, Nicholas Rossi, a.k.a. Arthur Wright, a.k.a. Nicholas, big long name starting with an A I can't pronounce, will be going to trial again, preliminary trial this time in Salt Lake County. He had his preliminary hearing in Utah County early February. He was extradited from Scotland in January. So there is, it was Dateline 48 Hours or 2020, one of them did a show on Nicholas Rossi. So Nicholas Rossi faked his own death in 2020 and has been living as Arthur Wright in Scotland. And honestly, the Wikipedia page on Nicholas Rossi is interesting enough. So one of the ways that they figured out he wasn't dead was after his supposed death, he was editing his Wikipedia page using an account that they knew belonged to him. So anyway, he is charged with 2 counts of aggravated rape in Utah, one in Utah County, one in Salt Lake County. There was a 3rd charge that was a misdemeanor of attempted rape that was dropped because it was not listed on the extradition form. So to extradite him from Scotland back to Utah, they had to have basically State Department's involved, all this stuff. The misdemeanor charge didn't get put on the extradition form, so they can't technically charge him with that at this time. So anyway, for Mr. Rossi's hearing in Utah County, he refused to come, saying, "I'm not Nicholas Rossi. I am Arthur Wright." And his defense counsel kept referring to him as Mr. Wright. But it's amazing that Mr. Arthur Wright's fingerprints match Nicholas Rossi's. And his DNA matches too. So it's kind of hard to say you're not Nicholas Rossi when you've got Nicholas Rossi's DNA. So anyway, March 8th will be his hearing in Salt Lake County, and there will be trial dates set. Other cases, if you saw the 48 hours special on Kouri Richins, there was so much left out of that. If you watch that and think, "Oh, there's no way Kouri did this. He must have done it to himself." They didn't bring up any of Kouri's financial crimes. Kouri has multiple lawsuits going on right now for the big one is that she sold a house claiming that it was, just hiding the fact that the place was full of mold and mildew. And there is a family now that has had multiple medical bills, and their son is never, ever going to be the same because of her malfeasance. She basically bought a house, did superficial painting over it, never fixed any of the leaks, never fixed any of the places where the mold was coming in. And this family has lost, they spent everything they had on their dream home, and now they can't sell it, they can't live in it. And Kouri's like, "Sorry, so sad, too bad." And you can't, with this type of malfeasance going on, 48 hours didn't even bring up any of this. I would suggest, if you thought, before you think that the 48 hours piece is accurate, go listen to the court hearings. Summit County does publish their court hearings, especially in the Kouri Richins case. Court TV has them all. And it's interesting. Go read they glossed over the walk the dog letter. The walk the dog letter is Kouri telling her mother how to tell her brother how to testify. And even on the 48 hours, he still didn't get it right. But her family is basically attempting to make Eric look like he was a major drug user. I think everybody who believes the 48 Hours series is going to be really surprised when they read the autopsy report in court. So anyway, that's the Kouri Richins fix. The same weekend as the Kouri Richins story, they also did a story out of Idaho about a man who was wrongfully convicted of a sexual assault and murder. And he was freed. He won a lawsuit against Idaho and the county. So the guy's now a multimillionaire, and he went down to Vegas and was murdered. So currently Vegas is investigating the murder of Mr. Tapp, who recently freed from jail after spending 20 years being wrongfully convicted, and now he's been murdered too. The first thing out of most people's mouths is, where were the Idaho police? So that one could end up being interesting. But then again, it could be just somebody in Vegas wanting money from a high roller. So it will be interesting to see if it was personal or if it was just random. Now, for the one that I mentioned at the beginning of this Flosstube. So, on March 27th, Kane Thomas Fairbanks, an 18-year-old male, will be sentenced for attempting to kill an 18-year-old female who was his Tinder date on May 12th, 2022. So on May 12th, Kane Thomas Fairbanks had a Tinder date with a girl that he swiped right on. They met at Mueller Park in Davis County. Today, there's another one for you with Davis County. Earlier today, I met with Tanea Kuntz, who is like a class A genealogist. She is like absolutely amazing when it comes to genealogy. And she is managing the GenCom page for Davis County. And anyway, Davis County, Mueller Park, May 12th, 2022. Kane Thomas Fairbanks was in the car with his Tinder date, and instead of doing what most Tinder dates do, he took out a knife and started stabbing her. She managed to get out of the car and started running away, injured as she was, and he stabbed her again in the back. But at that point, she had screamed enough that she had brought some witnesses who basically kept him away from her. They started getting her some help. She had life-threatening injuries. She was taken to the hospital, and from everything I've read, she did survive. But he managed to get into his car, drive away, parked his car at the gas station, started going down streets, found a 64-year-old woman, and started stabbing her. And luckily, some neighbors heard her screaming, came out. He started running away. Somebody chased him, caught him, held him until the police arrived, and the 64-year-old woman was life-flighted to a hospital where she was treated for her life-threatening wounds, and I do believe that she recovered as well. You know what? Give me a second here. I'm going to double check that. Okay. Kane, thanks for waiting. Kane Thomas Fairbanks is charged with 2 counts of attempted aggravated murder. So both cases are attempted, so both victims survived. But he testified in his hearing when he pled guilty on January 19th that he planned to kill his Tinder date before he ever called her. And then he planned to kill the 64-year-old woman. Then he planned to go back to his car and continue driving around the country, killing, as he put it, unfortunate people who were vulnerable. and he pled guilty but mentally ill. His sentencing will be on March 27th. So by the time we meet again, he will have been sentenced. But interestingly enough, when I went looking for Tinder Murder Utah, Thomas Kane was the one that came up. Kane Thomas Fairbanks was the one that came up because he had just been sentenced. He had just had his arraignment. However, if we go 2 years earlier and about an hour north, in 2020 in Layton, Utah. Yes, I'm from Utah. We don't pronounce T's in the middle of things like mountains. Layton. Ashlyn Black was killed by her Tinder date. Ethan Hunsaker was her Tinder date at the time, and he was renting a place in Layton, Utah. He brought Ashlyn back to the house and murdered her because the voices in his head told him to. Ethan has been sentenced to 15 to life. He was initially sentenced to up to 18 months of mental health treatment because the judge felt that Ethan Hunsaker would be a danger to the other inmates, the guards, and pretty much himself. So with up to 18 months in the mental health facility, he was then transferred to the Utah State Prison System. And Ethan Hunsaker does show up on the Department of Corrections inmates list now. He is currently 28, and his victim, Ashlyn Black, I don't remember how old she was, but I have that pulled up, so just a sec. Ashlyn was 25 years old when Ethan killed her. There is a dateline on Ashlyn. I think it's a dateline. It's either dateline 2020 or 48 hours. But Ashlyn's family has they've suffered a lot just going through the court system and everything. But at Hunsaker's sentencing, Judge David Connors said that part of the reason Connors ruled that Hunsaker would first go to the state hospital is because Hunsaker is experiencing suicidal and homicidal ideation. Frankly, I admit that that's not the primary reason I'm doing this, saying he was concerned for the inmates, correction officers, and others that Hunsaker might harm if he was sent straight to the prison without treatment. We won't go into the state of mental health in the U.S. But speaking of other places, so if there is anybody across the pond watching this, anybody from the UK, if you heard about if you heard anything on that side of the Atlantic about the extradition of Arthur Wright / Nicholas Rossi, I'd be interested in hearing about that. So, hey, go ahead and leave a comment. So, anyway, that is my true crime for right now. April 1st, Chad Daybell will be in the courtroom in Idaho, up in Idaho. His trial starts April 1st. Lori Vallow Daybell's trial for the murder of her husband conspiracy to murder her husband will be in July down in Arizona. Kohberger, with the hearings that have been going on with Brian Kohberger, I highly doubt that we see him in trial before 2026. I mean, I know right now they're saying summer of 2025, but I'm willing to bet that it's 2026 before we see anything. Yeah, that's my list. So if you made it all the way through, do the YouTubey things. Oh, I met an author. That's the title of the book, is I Am Not a Serial Killer, and it's actually a pretty cool book. It's got an interesting premise to it. It is a paranormal fiction. So if you like paranormal fiction, I would highly suggest that I am not a serial killer, but I am a monster hunter. So yeah, I just gave you the twist. So like, subscribe, do the YouTubey things. Remember, pattern is just a place to start. And since we're leaving on such a dark note with all of the crime that we handled, because these were horrendous. I mean, we're talking going out on a Tinder date and then getting killed. I mean, so in some of the research I was doing on this, Ashlyn's sister says that she is terrified of dating. And who wouldn't be? Ashlyn's younger sister has grown up knowing this. So yeah, no, she doesn't date online. Be careful if you date online. Guys, there's so much catfishing out there, and there is so much cybercrime out there. Yeah, I got a text from somebody claiming to be my boss. Since I was in the office and my boss was in the office, I went in and showed it to my boss and said, "This isn't you, is it?" And he says, "Oh, of course not. That's not me. I don't even know your number." I'm like, "Well, cool." And I immediately texted back to the person who said he was my boss. I said, "I thought you said never to use this personal number because your wife would find out." Amazing how that scammer went away. By the way, my boss thought it was funny, but I don't think he told his wife. Anyway, be careful what information you give out on social media. Be careful some of those things that are designed for your birth month, your first name, your middle name, city you were born in, your first job. A lot of those are security answers, and they can be used to hijack your identity. So be careful out there. And I think we're done. So since we left with such dark things, I will send you out with some slideshows, and I may even try and succeed in getting music to it if I can remember how to do that. I will give you pictures of my Teresa Wentzler whips. I will give you some pictures of what it looks like when I start filming and what it looks like when I end filming. I will give you a picture of my new spinner rack. And I think that's it. So until next month, keep those needles flying, and remember, the pattern's just a place to start. Enjoy all.